and welcome to Broadband Breakfast Live Online for Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. I'm Drew Clark, editor and publisher of Broadband Breakfast. Very excited to welcome you to this particular preview event of the Broadband Communities Summit that is happening in just a few weeks' time, from May 1st to May 4th of this year. But before we introduce our guests who will be speaking about the summit and previewing the great content that you can expect in Houston at the event, I just want to introduce you to Broadband Breakfast. We are a news and events company focused on, as we like to say, better broadband, better lives. We're very busy every week. We have a Broadband Breakfast Live Online event. Obviously, today we'll be talking about Broadband Communities Summit. Next week, we're going to be talking about green broadband and the interaction between electric infrastructure and broadband infrastructure. The following week, we're going to be talking about AI and regulation of AI. And then the next week, when we're at Broadband Communities, we'll be doing our live online event from Houston or the Woodlands. And we're going to be talking about multifamily broadband and some of the issues associated with it. There's also many other broadband events happening, and look forward to learning more about those that are coming up in the coming weeks and months, particularly with so much attention right now on the broadband equity access and deployment program of the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. These are all very significant issues that need to get sorted out. And I'm sure many will be sorted out, more will be discussed at the Broadband Community Summit. Last thing I just want to quickly mention beforehand is, for those of you who are members of the Broadband Breakfast Club, we have premium content we introduce every month. We'll be releasing tomorrow our report about green broadband in time for Earth Day later this month. And you can really see and learn the details of the interconnections between the broadband and electric infrastructure. Let me go ahead and roll out our panelists for today's discussion. We are very grateful to have Barbara DeGarmo, who is the CEO of Broadband Communities and a longtime friend. Barbara, I'm really excited that you wanted to be a part of a preview session here. Still have time to get registered, sign up for Broadband Communities. You have 3 days to sign up at the discounted rate of $510. So don't miss out on that. Barbara, I'm sure you can tell all of the readers why it's so important to attend this summit. But Barbara, after we hear from you, we're going to hear from Scott Woods. Scott is the Vice President for Community Engagement and Strategic Partnerships at Ready. And I understand you have a broader portfolio now, Scott. So look forward to hearing about that and hearing about what we can expect from Ready and Broadband Money at Broadband Communities. And then we're going to hear next from Kim McKinley. Kim, great to see you again. Kim's the Chief Marketing Officer for Utopia Fiber, which is the largest open access network operating in the United States. Stands for Utah Telecommunications Open Infrastructure Agency, and really has been doing incredible work in providing connectivity to people in Utah, and I think being an inspiration to many other parts of the country and elsewhere. And then batting cleanup, and today's discussion will be Valerie Sargent. Valerie is the multifamily news correspondent at Broadband Communities and comes from a very extensive background working in this space of multifamily or multiple dwelling units. I never understood the controversy over those terms, but maybe Valerie can enlighten us when we get to your turn. But Barbara, over to you. Tell us a little bit about Broadband Communities. It's back in a big way, and of course, we'll all be there and looking forward to it, but tell us why those who may not have been there before should make a point of going to Broadband Communities.
Okay, so, I hope that, excuse me, God, now I see how horrible my bedroom looks. First of all, we know the importance of broadband at Broadband Communities because we all work remotely, as you can see. And so we enjoy the summit. I'm talking about the staff of Broadband Communities. We enjoy the summit because it's one of the few times we ever see each other actually in person. This has been going on for close to 20 years now. The company, as it exists now, was begun by my husband, was championed by my husband, Scott, my late husband, and I'm not the founder. I'm just sort of like the reluctant inheritor of the business after he passed away about close to 8 years ago. And got more and more interested. So I'm learning along with everybody, all the attendees who come to learn more about broadband, how they can, how they can plan for it, how they can execute it, how they can market it, how they can profit off of it in their communities. And we sort of have a large definition of what community is. So it can be an apartment building, which is what I live in New York City, or it can be a big housing development. It can be a city, it could be a town, whatever you feel, whatever your community is. The program of the summit, which we do every year, is fun and interesting, and it is we get, to paraphrase the song, we get a lot of help from our friends putting it together. It's put together by people like Scott and Kim and Valerie and Drew, who are broadband champions for, in one way or another. It's not put together by vendors. It's all, it's your peers. If you're in this business or you want to get into knowing how to bring broadband to your own community. There's certainly tons of money. I mean, it's been interesting as it's evolved for me, at any rate, over the last few years, because originally it was, 8 years ago, it was more sort of, well, why do we need high-speed broadband? All I'm doing is emailing my kids, or they're, on. And now how much all of that has changed. I don't think anybody has to argue about why you need high-speed broadband now. What you need to know is what's happening out there now. And there's money, how to get your hands on it, whether it's money that's coming from the federal government, money that's coming from private investors. There are obstacles to getting that money. You need to know about how to overcome them. All of these things are covered at the summit. Partnerships have become more important. You need to know how to put together partnerships. So a lot of the programming is sort of like a two-phase thing. So Kim, for example, it will be doing a partnership primer. There'll be other parts where there's partnerships taking off, and then it'll be followed by a session that has some very interesting partnerships, are the panelists, and they'll be talking about that. They're obviously overcoming the digital inclusion, overcoming the digital divide is very important. So we have the first session is on how it really takes nitty-gritty hard work, and it's some of the people, one of not to call out anybody in particular, but one person on there has installed broadband in the largest public housing project in New York City. And again, going back to the song, to another song, I figured if he can make it here in New York, he can make it anywhere. So he'll be discussing, among others, and then that'll be followed by a session. He's not the only one on that, but they'll be followed by a session that's a bunch of people that are in the digital inclusion field that's called "Look What We Did with Our Broadband," and it's some very interesting stories about how they've worked to, whether it's education or it's telehealth, it's just getting the services to your community and on and on. So our agenda is posted at www.broadband bbcmag.com is our website. And you could take a look for yourself if you're not familiar with what we're doing. We officially start on Tuesday, May the 1st, but we actually, or it's Tuesday, May the 2nd. I'm sorry. Obviously, okay, Tuesday is actually May the 2nd, but May the 1st, which is Monday, which is the move-in date for our exhibitors in our exhibit hall. But in the afternoon, we do some more deep dive workshops. Drew was involved in one, and Kim, I think they can talk about those. And then Monday night, if you're there, we start with a pre-conference cocktail party. So we, as I said, this is the only opportunity those members of the staff actually have to get together. So we like to have fun amidst all the hard work of putting it together. And so we'll have each night, we have something special going on. We have breakfast, we have lunch, we take care of our attendees. And I think that's probably all that I better say. Back to you, Drew.
Barbara, thank you so much for laying it out. And obviously, the pandemic caused, the making broadband communities virtual. And 3 years ago in 2020, and then 2021, you were back, although it was a lot less people than perhaps you would have liked. And 2022, kind of the momentum's really building. And I think that one of the things that you and I are both seeing is that there's a lot of questions that need to be answered about broadband, but there's also a lot of interactions and deals that need to be made, and that's really the type of thing that you can only do at an event. And Broadband Communities is one of the best places to do that. So very, very excited to hear more about the program. Let's pass the mic over to Scott to tell us a little bit more about some of the things that you can expect in the program and what you're excited for at this year's Broadband Communities Summit, Scott.
Yes, thank you, Drew. We're excited at Ready.net and Broadband Money to be the official corporate host for this event. Again, as Barbara said, we champion fun, and we love the event because it brings together all of the stakeholders focusing on the community. And so from philanthropic to service providers to the public sector, we bring all of the stakeholders together in an effort to improve and get better and learn. And so we champion that type of event. We are gracious and grateful that we're able to sponsor and serve as the host. And so what people can expect is, as Barbara laid out, really diverse set of topics that will fit you and your community, depending on where you are in your broadband deployment journey. But to do so in a spirit of collaboration and working together with other people who are going to move the proverbial broadband ball and digital equity ball forward in our community. So we're excited about the opportunity. Personally, I'm excited about being a summit chairperson, to be able to work with some really fine folks to put together the agenda and making sure that from a comprehensive perspective, we are addressing the needs of the industry and the space, again, as we get closer into implementation and into the impact that we want this to have on the digital divide and in our community. So I'm grateful. Everyone come on out. We'll have a great time again, and continue to get better and continue to learn and continue to push forward as we get closer to where we need to be as a country in solving the digital divide for our communities.
Thank you, Scott. And in the chat for this post, as well as on the page for this event on Broadband Breakfast Live Online, we have links to the program. We certainly invite those of you who are attending in whatever format to visit there and to give us your questions. We can take your questions on Zoom or on any of the platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. They should all feed in. So we're hoping to be able to address those. But first, we want to hear from Kim McKinley. Tell us a little bit about Utopia Fiber, Broadband Communities, what to expect there, and over to you, Kim.
So Thanks, Drew, and thanks, Barbara, and thanks, Scott, for your kind of warming this all up. I don't know what else to say, but we're excited. This is my second year as one of the chairs of this conference, which I believe is personally one of the best conferences in the industry. For many reasons. I think it brings an eclectic group of folks together to talk about not only in a way of how the broadband really impacts communities, and where you're bringing some content that I haven't seen at other conferences. I think that a lot of conferences have been focused on BEAD money and how communities can get BEAD money, but one of the big factors that I hear all the time is that BEAD is not going to be available for a lot of communities. So we're bringing some experts in the industry to talk about what if you can't get BEAD money? How can you build out your community? So there's just, I think that from what I've seen, there's some speakers that I've never seen on the circuit. So I'm super interested. One of the keynote sessions is going to be Gigi Sohn, who just stepped down from her FCC nomination. This will be her first public interview, and she will be at the lunch keynote, and we will be interviewing her. And seeing what she has to say about not only what the FCC process looked like, and as we all watched from the press, it looked quite interesting, her journey, and what she believes that the broadband industry is going to look like in the next 10 years. So very, very excited to see what Gigi has to say. I will give a shameless plug to Utopia Fiber. We have released we're releasing a documentary at Broadband Communities, and we're just talking about why Utopia Fiber started back in 2004 as the largest open access network and what it looks like today. So that will be happening as well. We have and I'm also a founding member of AAPB, which is the American Association for Public Broadband, that is doing a whole pre-conference session on Monday, along with Broadband Breakfast Media, Drew, sorry about that, and with Click. And we will be talking about some very interesting topics with some great panelists about why community broadband exists as well. So there's just so much going on. And even though we're going to be in Houston and it's a little hot for this Utah, we are excited to be there and excited to really just meet up with people who are doing some great things in the industry. And I will give kudos, Barbara. I think this is one of the best events because it's a very homey and very welcoming feel to a conference. Some of these conferences can get a lot of acronyms and a little overwhelming. And I think it's just a really great conference, and I'm excited to be there in a couple weeks.
Well, thank you, Kim, and at least you will be able to avoid the snow in Utah in May, because I'm certain there will be a lot of snow still in Utah at the time of Broadband Communities.
That is very factual. Thank you, Drew. Yeah, I'm excited to be in a little bit hotter of a place.
So, Valerie, your turn. Tell us a little bit about what is the role of a multifamily dwelling unit in the broadband landscape, and what are some things that those who attend the summit for that reason can expect to take out of the summit?
Sure, Drew. And to answer your earlier question on the difference between multifamily and MDU, on the multifamily side of the industry, the property management side, the way that they promote things is, you want to create a sense of community, and multi-dwelling unit doesn't sound like someplace where people want to automatically move in. It sounds very contractual, MDU, which is how it's usually used. But as people talk about welcoming people into a multifamily community, it sounds more welcoming and engaging. And so people want to be residents there rather than tenants. Tenant is a contractual term as well. Have a long history in the multifamily industry that spans back to the last century. So I definitely have enjoyed bringing my multifamily perspective to Broadband Communities, where I've been the multifamily news correspondent and executive consultant for them. This is my, 2021 is when I started, Barbara, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah, I've just hit 2 years, but I'm longtime friends with my friends at Broadband Communities, and have been coming to this event for years, and I love it. And I am tasked with overseeing the multifamily track. So all of the multifamily track is actually focused on what's required to bring broadband into any type of MDU or multifamily community, whether it be an apartment building or condos or any type of space where we have several people living together in the same buildings. And so there are a lot of challenges in that, in putting in a system, in different providers sharing space, in affordable units, and bridging that digital divide to get service to those residents. And I was excited this year. We've added some new advisors to our board on the multifamily side. So we've really got some different perspectives. All of our chairs and our advisors, they are from the multifamily industry who help us plan this particular segment. And I partner in particular with Kevin Donnelly at the National Multifamily Housing Council. I often write articles with him as well. And so they've added their NMHC town hall segment. We used to do it all as one segment. On the first day, we're actually breaking it into 2 parts this year. So it's going to bookend that first day, which is going to be really exciting. And they're going to have a panel that deals with directly the owner perspective and what the owners are saying about broadband services in their community. And we will be dealing with, in that segment, the digital equity and how to capitalize on that federal funding that is available. And we really want to look at, what does future flexible broadband look like? How do you plan for the future? So those are going to be covered in the first part of the town hall. And then, of course, we get an FCC update later in the day as far as what's going on from a multifamily perspective and the state of the multifamily market, what actually is happening. And then we'll dive into infrastructure as the other part of the town hall. One of the sessions that I'm really excited about is the session that I'm part of to kick off the conference. So Sean Buckley and I are interviewing 2 different communities in our Great Communities session. And Cox and Dojo Networks are the service providers that are being featured, and the properties are Uncommons and the Marshall. And Uncommons is uncommon. And I have had the privilege of speaking with them before, and this is an owner that literally brought me to tears with the way that they revamped everything that they were doing from a development perspective to address the needs of multifamily housing and what residents are really needing in an environment. They had to completely rethink their plan during the pandemic. And they were just getting ready to go into development when the pandemic hit, and they revised everything that they were doing based on what was happening. And it's a remarkable story. So that's exciting. We have a few people who are advisors now that bring in marketing and a development perspective, and also an affordable housing and a senior living perspective. And we're going to be diving into the difference between bulk and managed Wi-Fi. There's a lot of confusion around those terms and what that means. And for the first time this year, we're actually going to be talking about electric vehicles and how broadband services tie in with that, and what's needed in those multifamily communities in order to have a successful EV strategy, because that's becoming more and more necessary as more and more people get electric vehicles. So some other exciting things. We've got a great, exciting new marketing session, how broadband's being used for that, and a power tech panel in the mornings. We've got digital equity. There are so many other things. I would encourage everyone to go look at the agenda. We're really excited about this year because we've had some wonderful input from our new attendees in our chair environment. So we're really excited.
Oh, that's so awesome, Valerie. Thanks for really giving us some great substantive. And she maybe had the benefit of this question. I posed it right as she was starting, that I said, I would love for each of our panelists to weigh in on what 1 or 2 speeches, panels, or events are you most looking forward to hearing at the BBC Summit. So let's hear the answers to that question from Barbara, Scott, and Kim as well.
Okay, so Drew, I laid this one on you. So every year I sort of like pick out something that I'm personally interested in. And this year, and in the past too, it's been on the digital equity side of it. And I thought, well, obviously telehealth is one of the main things. And what can we do that's a little bit different? And so, you know, you're watching press releases, you're watching other, the Broadband Money site, whatever. And I'm not sure exactly where this the one that I'm excited about is a woman who is she's actually in the nursing department of Texas A&M University, and she is in the forensic teaches forensic nursing. So as part of forensic nursing is when a woman is sexually assaulted, in order to file the police, to get it into the actual, it's not court system, but into the legal system, I guess you would say, there's an examination that has to take place. And it seems that if you live in some very rural community, on top of everything else, there may not be a hospital where they're capable of doing this, 50 or 60 miles away, and except 50 or 60 miles away. So on top of everything else, when you think about it as a woman, that's this horrible thing that's happened to you, then you have to make your way somewhere to be physically examined, which is not a very exciting process anyway. But what they have done at Texas A&M is they set up a program where they do it, where you can, with local communities and, whether it's a hospital or it's a clinic, you go in and you connect up with a forensic nurse, and she guides the she can see what you're doing, you can see what and guide you if you're the nurse that's examining the victim, or she can tell them what to do, how to do it, how to collect the evidence and stuff, so that it saves a person that's already been through something hugely traumatic having to then pick up and get themselves to some hospital somewhere. Instead, they can just go within their local community. So I thought, well, this is like one of the most interesting uses of telehealth that I think I've seen, and that I feel a relationship as the mother of two daughters and a woman. I think hopefully there's some men out there that might agree. Most of them that I've mentioned it to, including Scott and Drew, I think, as we discussed the program, we're a little, okay, well, that sounds interesting. But it's a group that's making a tremendous amount of difference. And there are a couple of other people on that panel, one of whom I picked up from the Broadband Money site, who is William Wells in Kansas City, who has a sort of after-school STEM program where, although we think of Kansas City, that's the Google thing, everybody has this high-speed connection. Well, there are areas of Kansas City, which is where his actual group meets, that aren't very well connected. And they were being turned down by the big providers. So we can't come in because we can't make any money off of you. So Wells, who runs this program, has a background in engineering, and he taught his students how to string fiber and how to build a network. And now they service a bunch of like a daycare center and several other places within their local area of the city. So it's just, some people that are out there, some of the things that people are doing are just like so interesting and so fantastic. And so that's what I'm enthusiastic about. Creative thought into what that, serving the people, what they need.
A lot of creative ideas, and you can hear about them and learn about them. And I think this kind of harkens to the phrase that is common in some, you don't hear maybe as much as you used to, but permissionless innovation, right? This is what broadband enables. It enables things like the evidence collection app that you've discussed, Barbara, and the other connections that take place. So thank you for calling those sessions and discussion points to our attention. Let's give Scott and Kim also an opportunity. What one or two sessions or events or activities are you looking forward to the most?
I'll jump in, Kim, since you hesitated.
Thanks, Scott.
No, I think for me, it's a handful, not just because of the ones that I'm facilitating, but we're focused in on ones that actually can impact or hamper the deployment of the BEAD and digital equity funds. So I'm excited about the Buy America panel, right? We've got representatives from Fiber Broadband, the Telecommunications Infrastructure Association, as well as my friend Mike Romano from NTCA. And that's exciting. We focusing on a really interesting mapping panel. We've got Jim Stegman from CostQuest on a panel to clear up to dispel some ambiguity regarding what the mapping and the FCC fabric actually is and is not. And we're not just going to focus on the FCC maps. We also have a panel right after that highlights some alternatives to the funding and mapping for fabric. The alternatives that states can use and utilize, obviously in the deployment of the BEAD and digital equity funds. So we're looking at it from a holistic perspective, going beyond just the quote unquote controversy beyond the FCC mapping. And then I'm also excited for panels that I'm not facilitating. This is one of the first conferences where there's a tribal based focus. So there's a tribe track, if you will, where Joe Valandra will bring forth some members from tribes to talk about the impact on Native American country and Indian country, the digital equity. So this is, again, bringing all of these topics together in one conference. I'm looking forward to hearing Angela Seifer. NDIA just had a really big, successful conference in San Antonio, if I believe, last month. So really bringing together all of those themes beyond just the mapping and implementation, and now getting into the execution, right? There are nuances we want communities to be aware of, the supplier diversity requirements, their climate requirements and all of these. So we want everyone to be aware of these as potential issues and pitfalls to avoid by talking about best practices and approaches. So I wish I could narrow it down, Drew, to just one or two. There are significant different methods to learn and to continue to grow and collaborate. So I'm excited about it.
Great, Kim.
Well, first of all, Scott, I'm just not good at the unmute button. So if I had gotten there first, I would have totally beat you. So next time I'll be on it. I think as a chair, like I would say that, Scott, you probably have this problem too, is that there's just so many panels that I'm looking forward to seeing. I think one of the ones that, Drew, you're actually moderating is Pitch Your Broadband Project to a group of investors live on stage, which is called, I think, Shark Tank. I think that's a really interesting panel because I think a lot of these people are looking for investors, and what are investors really looking for when you're looking to get an investor on your project? So super excited to see what you make happen there, Drew. A couple others, I think it's always interesting, as we know, that the state broadband offices are going to have a lot of power when this BEAD money comes down. So what the state broadband officials are saying and NTIA is saying in that panel of what is their perspective of what we're going to see in the next year. And lastly, I think is one of my favorites, is one of the biggest words that's probably overused and used in many ways, is the overbuilding heroes. What does overbuilding really mean? It means competition. So looking at success stories of what overbuilding means, and is overbuilding really a bad thing? So I think those are some really interesting panels with some really interesting new perspectives that are out there. And I can't say this enough. I just think this is going to be an incredibly interesting conference with some perspectives of people I haven't seen on stage in a very long time, or if ever. So yeah, no, I'm excited. You'll see me in the audience probably asking way too many questions, so I will be that annoying person. So just you wait.
Well, we're joined
can
by.
I highlight, can I follow up just on that, Drew? 'Cause I think
Please
Jim
go ahead, Scott. Yeah.
points out a very important point. One of the things that we love about this conference is you get to hear from a diversity of voices that traditionally aren't on the circuit, right? And I think that's really good to hear. There are knowledge and thought leaders and people who have best practices beyond just those of us that we see on the, you know, the routine circuits, the conferences here in Washington, D.C. and some of the bigger ones. So this is ones where, you know, we actually, when we talked about this in our summit chairpersons meetings, you know, we want to actually have a platform where we're highlighting a number of different diverse voices and not just the, you know, the same. And that's why I'm excited about it, is because there's so many different tracks. There's so many different opportunities to hear from thought leaders, from local community to national leaders. And it creates that environment, hopefully, that we want to replicate as we move closer to, you know, the implementation in actual communities. There are voices that we do need to uplift and highlight that have things of importance to say, and that will ultimately impact how efficient and effective we are with achieving the goal of solving the digital divide. So I just wanted to piggyback on that. Thank you for allowing me just a few seconds to do that.
Oh, absolutely. I'll come back to kind of bringing different worlds together between broadband and tech and digital equity a little bit later. But we are joined by a special visitor, Steve Ross. I can't kick you off, Steve, because you're a former professor of mine. And so, Steve, let's hear some of the points you were making in the Zoom chat room about a couple sessions that you have had some involvement with. Just take a minute or two to describe those and what people can expect from the summit, and introduce yourself so that people know you're not just a random visitor here.
I was the founding editor, and Scott roped me in 2004 to be the founding editor. And some of the very earliest stories we did, including the January 2005, was on Utopia, and we loved it. And we're very nervous about the Utah poison pill. And the story we rewrote was quite a bit different than the fawning, oh, this is the future. We said, by heavens, it should be the future, but there's this poison pill, and it's going to screw things up for a while. And it did. We're very, very careful with our readers' money. We don't ever want to lead them in the wrong direction. And I developed the financial models that are on our website. They're all free, downloaded. Most people today know how to modify it. But just as one example, I'm doing a workshop, as I do almost every year, talking about, well, how do you modify the models to account for delays, because parts are tough to get, labor is tough to get, that sort of thing. And I've been getting a lot of calls on that over the last year and a half. And so I focused my workshops on that, in part in self-defense. I'll get fewer calls. But I just had one typical example. As interest rates go up, a lot of the public agencies and communities that are just thinking about maybe they're going to get back into broadband, and they're saying, well, gee, you know, the interest rate gets up to going to cost us 5, 6, 7%. And once we start building, it's going to take us 2 years to deploy and start our cash flow. And so we've got to budget an extra 20% just to pay the interest while we're not making any money. And I said, that's not the way broadband works anymore. You don't have to build a head end. You don't have to serve and market the video yourself. As you light up a neighborhood, you can start making cash from that neighborhood if you so desire, and you design your plan that way. And the response I get on the phone is shocking. Really? Wonderful. We can do this. Well, what it amounts to is you come to a live event and you sit and talk with people, not just the presenters, but also in the exhibit halls, and they'll show you, hey, we can figure out a way. You want this network, we have this extra funding from BEAD, we have extra money going into tribal, we have extra funding going into rural areas. It's still there. Reconnect is doing fine. The issue is a little bit less the money. You've got the boost. The issue is coming up with a really sharp business plan, and we can help. We can get you the big pickup truck you really want.
So, Steve, what time is that
message.
session? What time is that workshop you've been discussing?
That's Monday afternoon.
Monday afternoon.
So I'm gonna break in here too, because with following up on what Steve's saying and also what Kim said too about so we have Steve, and then we've got another workshop following that. That's Are You Presentation Ready? So and Drew, you'll be running this one, and it's for people that are just getting into figuring out how they present themselves to possible investors. Are you investment ready? And then we also have the Shark Tank. If you don't feel like you're ready, go to the workshop on Monday, get ready to present. And then at the end of the conference, you can participate in the Shark Tank and actually present. Or even if you haven't, if you're already ready and you want to get some practice in your presentation, we're not giving out, we don't think these lenders are going to actually be giving out any money right there in the woodlands, but it gives you a chance to practice. So
right.
Those are just, how everything sort of like ties in with each other is fun this year. I think we've tried to do that in a lot of cases.
Now, Scott also mentioned in the Zoom chat about Gigi Sohn, and she's going to be giving really her first speech since the kind of the debacle of the criticism of her nomination, and so I'm sure she's going to tell it the way it really is. But Steve Ross has pointed out that even though she's very well known for her net neutrality advocacy, she's really been a very future-oriented person looking down the line for some of the big benefits available from broadband. Are there other kind of big name speakers or sessions that are worth mentioning in any of the spaces? The rural
we've sort of cut down a bit on maybe we've always sort of approached it this way of not having so many individual speakers, but we do have, we're very excited about Gigi, and actually it's going to be a candid chat with her she's not going to just stand up there and give a speech. Kim and Bob Knight, who is another one of our chairs, are going to be doing whatever fireside chat means, a fireside chat with which
Barbara,
it means not actually going to be it.
It means bad jokes. It just means really bad jokes.
Yes, you're going to be sitting there, they're going to be sitting in seats talking to each other, chatting each other up. We also have Andy Burke, that's the RUS commissioner, who will be giving a sort of kickoff speech before we get into the big session that's on government spending, just to sort of set the stage on that. Yeah. And then we have Joshua Edmonds. Anybody that's heard him speak, he's a fantastic speaker. He runs Digital C, and he will be speaking up on the ACP and the necessity of how we all need to get together and make sure that this program is given permanent funding. So he's doing that to kick off, which then sort of interested me that the multifamily side also has a big interest in having that money, made permanent, so that going in that you've got, X number of residents who are going to be signing up to your broadband offering. So it goes across all of our attendees. Sometimes we think the multifamily side is a little separate from the rest of from the community broadband side, but we're all becoming more and more, interrelated. And on all of these, we're trying to do Q&A sessions too, so that with the audience, we want audience participation as well.
Let's raise a couple.
Drew, just really quickly on the family side, we do have Joshua speaking on our digital equity session as well, which I'm really glad that he's going to be a part of. And the traditional multifamily conferences versus the Broadband Communities Summit, I used to see a lot more separation. I invited Kate Good to actually be part of our advisory board this year, and she's doing our tech marketing. She's leading a panel on that, which we've never really covered. Like, how do we market this broadband tech to multifamily residents, and what are those residents desiring? We have the different ages of residents, and the younger ones are really leading the charge on what's to come in multifamily. And so she's bringing a really interesting perspective with her panel on what residents are asking for in the multifamily industry. So I'm starting to see a little bit more merging between those that just traditionally deal with broadband and those who are out there promoting it. So I think it'll be really exciting.
I want to raise a couple of issues. Let me put them out there and we can sort of talk through them in groups or one at a time. One, I'd love, Kim, to hear your further reactions on what Steve said about the way Utopia was viewed 20 years ago and the way it's viewed today. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about kind of the maybe the tensions between the owners of property and the providers of broadband within those communities, as well as the view of residents. And then we'll also talk. I'd also love to hear Barbara and others talk about how, unlike a lot of conferences, this is not necessarily driven by either the vendors or the ISPs, and I'd love, what that means to all of you who are participating in this event. So let's start with the Utopia question for Kim.
So I'm not trying to say that Utopia wasn't probably a dumpster fire 20 years ago. I mean, we're not denying of what we used to be or what happened 20 years ago. I mean, I think there were a lot of the cities that started this had very well-intended thoughts of where this wanted to go. I mean, that there's no doubt in that. How they executed it and how they went about hiring every consultant in the industry. I think it's very funny when I talk to people at the broadband circuit, because 10 years ago when I started doing this, nobody would say they worked on the Utopia project, right? But now since Utopia is successful, everybody in the industry is like, well, I was a consultant on the original part of Utopia. So I think that's what Utopia goes out there and does today, is tell people the lessons learned that we've learned through 20 years of doing this. So do I deny what Steve is saying at all? Absolutely not, of what used to be Utopia. I think that is why one of the reasons we're doing the documentary and we're releasing it at Broadband Communities this year, because what was happening is that I heard everybody telling the Utopia story, and I'm like, you guys weren't here. You didn't live it. So let's tell it from our perspective and get our word out there, because it's very much political fodder in DC. The Utopia story has open access networks become more and more popular across the US. And I'm like, let's get out and actually tell our truth. So yes, no, I don't think you're wrong, Steve, at all of what you're saying, of what happened.
And building on the, great place to introduce a film like this. Last year at Broadband Communities, there was another film introduced, a brief one, about American Association for Public Broadband, right? And Kim, you're of course a member of that body. We're working together on the 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock program, jointly with Broadband Breakfast and the Coalition for Local Internet Choice, that will discuss the particulars of cities and broadband and what they need to know. And so it's great that this conference, this summit, can be a great point of launch for that discussion. Let's chat just a little bit more about the dynamics on the multifamily side, Valerie and everyone. There seems to be tension. Every time I go into one of these sessions, I recognize that there's a difference of opinion between different players. Could you just give us a quick, 1 to 2 minute snapshot of the dynamics of the interests of one side of multifamily versus the interests of another, Valerie?
And can you delineate that a little bit more for me, Drew? What do you mean by the different sides?
Well, I guess what I'm thinking about is I've been to a fair bit of shows where there's more convergence between the internet service providers that are offering wireless services and fiber, and a lot of them are trying to get into multifamily, and they can't because the owner wants a certain type of arrangement. So that's kind of what I'm referring to, Valerie.
Gotcha. Okay. So between the providers and the owners.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you think about a multifamily community, they are responsible for buildings with several people living in them. And while some providers may want to be able to just go right in and provide service, it has to be organized, and it has to be in a way that the providers can work together on a property. So most of the properties out there do have some sort of choice available to residents for different services. And there was the issue that happened in San Francisco where they were trying to get into the building and just be able to have any provider that they want. There's wiring considerations for everything that happens. And ultimately, the owner has the right to decide who is in the building contractually. And so I don't know that it's contention so much as in just ensuring that there's opportunity for everyone. I think that now, with the way that the industry is going with broadband, you're actually seeing a lot more of the independent providers being able to approach owners and submit proposals to go into buildings. We have bulk solutions that are happening. We have managed Wi-Fi that's available to help. There are a lot of smart apartments out there where there's technology being deployed that is required to plug into a broadband system. In fact, we've got a really interesting sustainability session on Thursday, so don't leave early. Make sure that you don't miss that one. But there are so many different solutions where a provider can provide multiple options to an owner that plays into the decision of who they're going to select to service their building. And ultimately, it's about finding the right solution for the residents of a particular building. And when we think about the digital equity sessions involved too, part of the challenges in that particular segment of the market is that the owners don't have much money to work with to put into installing a system in the building, and there's no profit margin for the providers. And so that's why there's such a challenge in that particular market, is because just having the systems put into those buildings for those residents who really have a need. It's an underserved market, and in some cases unserved. And it's because it doesn't make financial sense for either party to actually go into those spaces. So I'm excited to hear about the creative solutions that are being employed for digital equity. You know, those are the areas where we really, I think the funding opportunities that are out there to help bring broadband to everyone, those are the things that are so needed in the market. And otherwise, I feel like they're very well served with the solutions they're employing right now.
Barbara, what's different about Broadband Communities from any of the other broadband conferences that you hear about? What in your view makes the Broadband Communities Summit unique from a perspective of the content and the people who come to the event?
I think it's because the content is developed by the people like the people that are on this call right now. It is not, some of them, I mean, there are vendors that suggest, I mean, at the beginning, people suggest a whole lot of different ones. And so then when we have when we get together as chairs, people come in, people like a Scott or a Kim or Heather Gold will come in, and we have to cover these 5 things. And so it's sort of like a mix and match. Most of the what comes out though are the suggestions from our chairs rather than any suggestions from a specific vendor. I mean, we do try. I mean, obviously that's how we stay in business too, is because they want to be on our floor and they want to have a voice. And so it's always a little bit of a tightrope sometimes. But mainly it's because it's like we are just concentrated on putting out the best program that we can. And it's so, we're not going to give X person that's, put in some 10 minutes or something to stand up there and just give a spiel about himself and his company. That's not going to happen at Broadband Communities.
Well, let's give each of the panelists an opportunity to give any final thoughts. I mentioned a little bit about the role of permissionless innovation, the role of the fiber world and the developing applications. Anything you're looking forward to in the future, not just this year, but going forward. And let's hear from Scott and Kim. Steve, we'll give you a chance too, and then Valerie and Barbara for the final word.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. That's a loaded question, right? There's a lot to look forward to. I mean, obviously, from my perspective, there's the decision, the initial allocation decision that's looming for NTIA, later this year, before the end of June. That's going to be the impetus for a lot of movement and action once the quote unquote money hits the street, and state broadband offices are either excited about or extremely frustrated about the money that they're going to receive. But notwithstanding that, there's just so much more that needs to be done, right? And so I think this is a conference that's the impetus for starting those conversations and planning and really get to the action, right? That's so as the corporate sponsor and host, we really want to activate people to movement, right? Let's start working together collaboratively to solve all of the issues that we face, and there are creative solutions and approaches out there that we all can learn from. So, and this is just getting started. There are issues in, quantum computing and the metaverse and AI that we haven't even talked about yet. That's going to impact a lot of what we do, not just from a business standpoint, but how we educate our children, how we conduct our businesses. So I view this, and we view this as a foundational element to be able to build and grow and expand. So I encourage everyone to come out. There's enough, information and knowledge out here for everyone. But again, our job as corporate hosts and sponsors is to set the tone. We believe in having fun, and we want to encourage people to participate in any and all the events, meet people, exchange information, and really provide that collaboration that we need to address the issues that we face moving forward.
Awesome. Wonderful, Scott. Kim.
Okay, first of all, I need Scott to stop stealing my answers. But I think one of the things that I'm excited for of this conference is that there's going to be wonderful panels, but it's really networking and really talking to people and really meeting the people and talking and hearing their stories and hearing people challenge each other, because we're not going to get better until we challenge other people's beliefs in this space. We all have an opinion, but if you don't look at somebody else's opinion and take what you can from it and go, oh, I could do that better on my point, or I could deploy better using this. I think those are some of the points that I love going to these events, and really just talking to people that you wouldn't see in your everyday work environment, and really just hearing what they have done and why they've done it, and how we can all use people's experiences to get better in our own network deployment. So I'm super excited to meet some people who I see on some of these panels, like all of you guys have talked about today, and really just get their kind of like go in and ask all the hard questions and hear their perspectives of some things we're struggling at Utopia Fiber. So super excited, and I'm already got my suitcase packed, ready to go. Let's go. Come on, Barbara.
All right, thanks. Steve, briefly.
The biggest thing that a conference like this does, because it's not a vendor fest, it's very, very attendee driven, very, very driven by the users, the deployers, small deployers, that sort of thing. But I just did a freebie favor for an equity fund director on Wall Street. He brought together about half a dozen small bankers, local bankers. And I mentioned the $30 a month subsidy for lower income families available. And they said, well, how does the deployer get it? And I said, the money goes to the deployer. It doesn't go to the family that needs it. It's a guaranteed cash flow to the deployer if the deployer plays nice. 5 out of the 6 bankers did not know that. These are the people that are giving out money. And the conference that we run, and we've run so successfully with 1,000 people showing up, the conference we run helps people from all ends of the business actually get the knowledge they need to take action. And it's a hell of a lot of fun.
That's great. Quickly, Valerie, Barbara, anything else you'd like to add here before we close it out?
I think that from a multifamily perspective, one of the things that I love about this track is it's educational towards the providers as well as people on the multifamily side. So you don't always see that at different conferences. You see it geared towards one audience or the other. And we really do try to shape it so that everyone benefits from their attendance of the sessions. And so one of the things that I look forward to for the future is hopefully people being inspired by what they learn and taking that so that they can employ it back at apartment communities, back within their businesses, and servicing those apartment communities. And it truly is one of the best networking events around. So the partnerships that evolve from that and the ideas are what I look forward to in the future.
Barbara, you get the last word.
Oh dear. Our goal is to bring you the speakers that the information you need to hear, the speakers you want to hear, and to send you home with a lot of ideas that you can put into immediate effect that will, enhance your ability for your community to take advantage of what high-speed internet connections have to offer.
Yeah, well, that will have to be
and
our
as far
last.
as AI and in the metaverse, that's for the next generation, not for me.
Well, it has been a treat to be with each of you. Get registered. You can find the links on Broadband Breakfast to the Broadband Communities Summit. And don't miss our regular Broadband Breakfast Live Online. Next week, we'll be talking about electric vehicles, charging, and broadband. On behalf of our great guests, Barbara DeGarmo, Stephen Ross, Kim McKinley, Scott Woods, and Valerie Sargent, I'm Drew Clark. I'll see you next